Hey, everybody. Welcome to another installment of the Live Not by Lies documentary series live stream with my good friend and collaborator and co-conspirator, Isaiah
Oh boy.
Smallman, coming to us from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Isaiah, how are you tonight?
I'm great. I'm just sitting here thinking about how we probably shouldn't put conspiracies of and everybody said they're already suspecting us of conspiring. But then again, what's a conspiracy? Just a couple of people getting together with a goal in mind. We want to make this
Well, you're just
series.
exactly right. So I am the producer of this project that we are very excited to be getting inching closer and closer, hopefully, to going live. But for now, we're still generating enthusiasm, expressed interest. Angel.com/live is where you can go. Probably, if you're watching this, you already have gone. Thank you so much, Isaiah. Where are we at? Where do we stand right now in some of those numbers?
Totally Bush League. I muted my mic because I cleared my throat. Forgot to turn it back on. Here we are. Well, I said we're making redonkulous progress, which is a really formal industry term to just it's not. We are making great
I
progress. We are currently showing 3,974,559 of expressed interest. Terrific turnout from all of you. Thank you guys so much. I mean, I'm blown away by just the support that we've gotten already. I think an even more exciting number is 8,435 people have
that's
gone
dude.
there.
That's
Oh,
exactly
actually, it's
right.
even it's an amazing number, and we're just really excited that this many people want to see this project made. And I think we're at a really interesting inflection point. I mean, we can't say exactly when yet, but we are very close to launching the live round. So it's really important now more than ever to keep an eye on the updates, stay involved with the project going forward, because we're hoping that we can make this a really quick run. So yeah, lots of support, lots of progress. It's going great.
Yeah, and it's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons we wanted to do this project beyond the core, believing in Rod's book, the message of it, the importance, the timeliness, the relevancy, all that is just there is. We were chatting with our friend Micah here, who's helping us do this tonight. You get calls from family members, from friends, people saying over the last 2 years, really, even before we formally launched this expressed interest campaign, people talking about this book, and I'd overhear people at coffee shops, and so there is this community of folks, this conspiracy, if you will. I'll stop using that term now. But no, this book, when you don't just say, "Oh, that was it." You can't read Rod's book. You can't explore this subject matter and go, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." Moving on. I mean, it grips you because it's such serious subject matter, and there is an intensity to it. Talking about totalitarianism and governments, oppression, communism, lack of freedom of speech, things that people have experienced throughout history, and we in the West, and in America in particular, have been fortunate enough on the whole to not experience as much of, relatively speaking. So I say all that just because it's you mentioned the dollar figure of amounts people have expressed interest in contributing, and we hope all of you, as Isaiah said, continue to spread word. Keep watching your email inbox. Keep watching the social media channels to see when we go live, which we hope is very, very, very soon. But the expressed interest number is great, but the number of people who have done it, a long-winded way to get there, of just saying thank you, over 8,000 people, that's incredible. And I think it speaks to what drew us to this project. And so, again, people who are watching this have probably seen some of what we've already done. But for those who haven't, Isaiah, can you give us a quick 30-second recap of what we're really trying to do here? What's the nuts and bolts? What is the endeavor we are hoping to embark on here?
Absolutely. So yeah, this is especially for people who are just joining us for the first time, and I'm sure there's some of you out there. Um, Really, what we're here to do is we're taking a book. I have it right here. "Live Not by Lies" by Rod Dreher. And we are adapting it into a documentary series. Now, originally we discussed the possibility of doing it as a feature film. It would work great as a feature, but the truth is we feel like this is a really important um, time to give people practical resources that they can use. And there's something in my gut, and that's been confirmed by all of our various collaborators, that says tying this story into very sort of, I don't want to say they're bite-sized because they won't be bite-sized, but digestible chapters effectively to give people really practical wisdom as to how to kind of live in this world that we find ourselves in, but also just really compelling, dare I say, entertainment. I think we want this to be a cinematic, interesting, moving experience for people. And so basically what we're going to be doing is going to Europe, uh, traveling around the United States and even Canada to some extent. And we're going to be talking to people who are both survivors of the Soviet Union's sort of particular brand of totalitarianism, which is obviously a big subject of Rod's book, but also talking to descendants of those folks, learning more about how it happened there. And then we're also going to be talking to various experts in the field of sort of not just government and politics, but also the psychology behind all of this. Because as the book lays out, and I think you're going to hear us discuss a lot, there's a lot of underlying trends that can happen, and a lot of that is related to this idea of lying. And to me, that comes back to even this idea of what we all know Socrates said, know thyself. And I think that's become kind of foundational wisdom for a lot of people who are interested in sort of living life to the fullest. And I mean that in a really deep way, not sort of a cheap way. And ultimately, lying to yourself and to anyone else is the exact opposite of that. And so what ends up happening is that you become available to predatory forces, and those are out there, as we all know. And many times they take the form of leaders who want to take advantage of you. And as believers of as Christians, but also just generally people of conviction, we feel like this is a really important time to draw a line in the sand and say, how do we individually look at ourselves first and really begin to build our lives around a different paradigm.
Well said across the board. So yeah, that is what we are up to. That's what we hope to be up to here. Our intent is hopefully that the next time you see our lovely faces and hear our voices in the coming days, it will be around the launch of a campaign. But again, for now, angel.com/live. You go, share it with friends. Let's just keep running these numbers up, because as soon as we do go live, if and when we do go live, I should say, we need you to continue to help us spread the word. And effectively, that'll be the moment to put your money where your mouth is, so to speak, and make good on some of these pledges, which we're so grateful for, so that we can go and make this film. And we'll unpack more of what that means as we get closer and ultimately launch. But tonight, we wanted to visit with you again, share a little bit more, which we will as we continue through this live stream of where things stand. But we also wanted to bring in two special guests. One, you already know very well, and it's probably the reason why you looked into this project in the first place, Mr. Rod Dreher himself. He's joining us all the way from Budapest. He will be here in a second. And so we pre-recorded an interview with Rod, and then also a good friend of ours, Pastor Darren Tyler of Conduit Church in Franklin, Tennessee. I've been watching episodes that might ring a bell because that's where I live, and he happens to be my pastor, somebody with whom we've become friends. He's a great leader, a very humble, thoughtful guy, unique background. He'll get into some of that. So in a second here, we're going to play that interview. Then we'll come back. We'll talk a little bit more, and we'll also take some questions. So if you are engaging with us tonight, please submit any thoughts, questions that you have about the project, about what we're doing, process, anything creative. Just tell us what you think of what you've seen so far, the torch video, etc. So we'll take those questions. You can start submitting them now. But we chatted with Pastor Darren and Rod earlier, and we wanted to bring in a local pastor. We wanted to get that perspective, boots on the ground. What's it like to lead a flock of people right now in these trying times. So Micah, if you're ready, why don't we play that interview, and then Isaiah and I'll come back and take some questions and wrap things up. Joined now by my good friend, Pastor Darren Tyler of Conduit Church here in Franklin, Tennessee, the Free State of Tennessee. And I will tell a very quick anecdote of the first time I visited Conduit Church at the behest of one of our good friends, Mr. Marshall. I remember sitting and we'd just moved here from Los Angeles. We were visiting churches. Someone recommended go to Conduit. They're good people. And I sat down, and Pastor Darren quoted or referenced "Live Not by Lies." You also made a joke about Anthony Fauci, which I appreciated. And I remember looking at my wife and just saying, "This is it. We're never leaving unless they make us leave. We are never leaving." And the other thing I said, which pertains to our conversation today, I said I would go to jail with these people. Just the conviction, the teaching of the word, but also just instantly feeling like I was at a place where people believed what they said. And so with that as a preamble, Pastor Darren, thank you for joining us for this conversation about Live Not by Lies, and welcome.
Yeah, I remember that as well, and I remember regretting later that we didn't have the omelet bar open for you on that day. Whenever we have honored guests, we like to bring in like the Marriott omelet chef and show you a good time. So I'm sorry that that didn't happen. We just didn't know. But
well, I'm sure it's intimidating every Sunday at 11 a.m. to look out at this space, looking back at you.
Oh no, no, the opposite. It's inspiring, man. It makes me want to like take a rack of ribs and challenge the castle gates.
Amazing.
It's actually not a bad metric to use when choosing a church these days. Make sure you're in a church with people you want to go to jail with.
Yeah, dude, Rod? That is so right? True, Rod. Like in the pre-pandemic-y world, and I've always been pretty open to hanging out with lots of different faiths, but I would sort of congregate based upon it was actually theological lines, which are still there. But I've added that now. Like, would I go to jail with that guy, or even more so, would he go to jail for me? Would I go to jail for him? And that's opened a whole new set of friends in the world. That I hate everything about the totalitarian ideas that are happening out there, but I have found my people because of it.
Absolutely. So I want to get into some questions, and Rod, you jump in here in a second. But just to get us into it, and for folks who are watching and know. They've been following us and following the project and everything that we're trying to do of building this documentary series based on Rod's book. Angel.com/live is where you can go to express interest. But for Darren, if you wouldn't mind, just give us a quick little background. Your background is so interesting of your previous career before full-time ministry, and I know tracking culture and cultural trends and looking at where things are going, especially amongst young people and pop culture. But if you wouldn't mind, just give us a very quick summary of what led you to ministry and what you're up to now.
Yeah, I mean, you're referring to the fact that I spent the first 20 years of my life. So my version of the wilderness of, Moses happened to go out into the desert was called the entertainment business. So I spent 20 years as a talent agent and an artist manager, which, found myself in so many bizarre worlds and differing ideologies. We had the LA office and the Nashville office and the New York office, and literally all three of them were completely different cultures. It was like 3 different countries. But that was I did that for 20 years, and it was great. And then God, at some point I was looking around going, I am, and I mean no disrespect for people that make music. I still listen to it and enjoy it, but I'm realizing, man, I'm literally making a product that you cannot see, that is purchased by disposable income by mostly teenagers. So what am I doing with my life? It was kind of a midlife crisis, I guess. And instead of buying a sports car, which in hindsight would have been cheaper, I planted a church here in Franklin, Tennessee, and that was 13 years ago. And it's been a wild ride.
Amazing. So we're part of the connectivity here of bringing you on is not only the pastor of the church I attend, and we share so many values and things that we care about, but you also
we've had Rod to the church last fall,
Yeah.
who spoke, and you interviewed him. And so you're again, just to get us into the conversation, and Rod and Isaiah, you start jumping in here after Darren's response, but in reading Rod's book and diving into this subject matter and everything we've gone through the last few years in particular, what did the book mean to you? What is it spoken to you? You as a local pastor on the front lines of helping people try to figure out life together in a community setting, what does the book mean?
Yeah. Boy, it would, and maybe, I don't know if anybody else felt this way, but even when I saw the title, I was like, okay, Dostoevsky, this guy, maybe someone else out there isn't crazy, and just because, I don't know, I felt there's a moment, especially somewhere around April and May 2020, where I'm thinking, am I crazy? Am I literally the only one that's questioning this? And one of the things that was good for me to be in the marketplace before I was a pastor was, I had a chance to sit in church services with pastors that I love and thinking, they're not answering any of the questions that I'm asking. And so for a while I thought, maybe that's the job of a pastor, is to answer a bunch of questions that nobody's asking. And I just thought, okay, if I'm going to do this and I'm going to be in a church where I'm going to grow old, I don't want to be in a church I hate. And I want to 100% attempt to do my dead level best to do it myself, or find someone who can answer the questions that people were asking. So Live Not by Lies comes out, and I'd already read the Benedict option, and I was completely fascinated by that. I spent and continue to spend a lot of time in nations with totalitarian governments when it is part of our mission work, and I began to recognize very clearly what was happening in our own country looked an awful lot like some of the places where I had been arrested in the past. So Live Not by Lies comes out, and I literally ordered it. I devoured it, and I'm trying to, this is a bold statement, but I think I could back it up with my bank statement. I've given away more copies of this book than I have to any other book. And so, yeah, when I got the opportunity to have Rod come to the church himself, I was like, man, we're all over that. I want the author himself to speak to our church people.
But Darren, I appreciate everything you're saying, really from the bottom of my heart. But tell me why you, as a frontline pastor, think that the message of this book and the testimonies that the people who lived through totalitarianism in the East Bloc, why is it so important to the average man and woman in the pew today?
Man, that's a great question, Rod, because when you read history and when you go through the interviews like you did so carefully, the thing that seemed to be one common thread that I see in it was that by the time anybody saw it was coming, it was too late. And had only there had been, somebody that would listen, somebody that would speak truth. And so for me, the importance of it for our church family and for every church family at this point is to see that, look, this could happen here, and parenthetically is happening. So there's a ship in that is sailing right now. And do we have time to stop it? Or are we going to, in 50 years, 100 years from now, is somebody going to be writing Live Not by Lies, the fifth edition, because we were asleep at the wheel in our country?
Yeah, I think one thing I struggle with dealing with my fellow Christians in the U.S., it's less so in Europe where I live now, is that American Christians just can't imagine that this could happen to us, to the United States of America. And one thing that I learned from reading Solzhenitsyn and Hannah Arendt and talking to people who lived through it is that it could happen anywhere on earth, and it will come at you so hard and so fast that you won't know what's hit you. So you've got to prepare, use the freedom that God gives you now to prepare for it. It doesn't mean that you hide and go out to the hills and hide and just wait for the end. You got to keep fighting as best you can, but you also have to prepare that you might lose, and you still got to keep the faith alive, even if the bad guys win.
And both of those are things that being prepared for, that we've got to be prepared for, right? Which is, we're at this pivotal moment, like this door hinge of history, like which way is it going to swing? But Jesus is still Jesus on either side of that, right? So whichever one it lands on, we get to still follow Jesus, just like our brothers and sisters throughout history have done. And at the same time thinking, But if I have anything to say about this for my children, for my grandchildren, let it be said of me, let it be said of our church and my brothers and sisters that we did everything we could to stop it before it was too late.
Yeah, I was out in Austria last weekend giving a talk about this to a Catholic parish in the Alps, and just a beautiful, beautiful part of the country. But this is a country that, less than 100 years ago was under Nazi domination. And I was talking to some of these Austrian Christians about a man named Franz Jägerstätter. He was an Austrian farmer, small village, Catholic, who was the only one in his town, him and his wife, to resist the Nazis. And they killed him in prison for refusing to swear allegiance to Hitler because of his faith. And one of the things I was talking to these Christians today about is, how is it that this entire town, everybody went to church on Sunday? They thought they were all good Christians. But when the Nazis came to town, only Franz and his wife resisted. And it's kind of a mystery in some ways, but also not, because Franz and his wife led such a strong Christian life that when Hitler showed up or the Nazis showed up, they knew what they were looking at, and they also knew what they had to do as followers of Jesus.
Yeah, and when you think, if you were to line up 100 people in any church or Christians wherever and just say, would you have been Corrie ten Boom, right? Would you have been Dietrich Bonhoeffer? They would all have said yes, because that's what we want to think that we are. And now, look, now's the time. Like, this is the moment. This is the Bonhoeffer moment. This is the Corrie ten Boom moment for our country to step forward. Because right now, the costs in our country, they're significant. Being people that are being canceled. I know you guys are talking about that in other places, but there's real financial cost to this. There is a guy in my church family who worked for 10 years with the band that if I said their name, you would know exactly who they are, and you're like, I love those guys. They're so cool. They let him go, not because he wasn't doing his job. He literally brought him to the dance and to where their success was, but they could not get on board with his Christian worldview, conservative principles, fighting for, just for basic morality. They're like, yeah, you're too controversial for me. It literally cost him a career. So there is a cost to truth right now, but as of yet, it's still not prison. As of yet, it's still not execution. And I would love it if we could act in a way before it comes to that, because I've been in countries where that is happening, where it's literally happening right now. It's happening in our world.
Well, one thing I'd love to hear your perspective. Go ahead, Rod.
Go ahead.
I'd love to hear your perspective on. Well, I think about addiction a lot, and I think about all the ways that can play out. And part of what I've learned in my own struggles with that kind of stuff is that we have to be prepared for the fact that if we are currently slaves to things that we become addicted to, we don't really have a choice in the matter of whether or not we're going to make the right decision under those situations. Like, we've already made that choice in the past, in a sense, and by continuing to not sort of put God in his proper place, which is at the core, that's really what addiction is, to me at least, is replacing God at the center of everything with something else. It could be a substance, but it could be lots of other things too. And I think it's interesting. I would love to hear your perspective on that as somebody who's working with people every day who I'm sure have struggles that run the full gamut of all of it. How do you think that is being fueled, I think, by, because Brave New World is a big reference with this, with Live Not by Lies, and I think one of the big things there is it's sex and drugs. I mean, if you give everybody sex and drugs, they're not going to do much to fight back. And so I'm curious about your perspective on that, kind of, again, being on the front lines with a congregation of folks trying to make it work.
Yeah, that's actually incredibly insightful, because I would also add to that an addiction to technology, which I'm sure you would include as well. I remember I shared it might have been a couple weeks ago in a sermon that, and half my church had no idea that China has a different algorithm for TikTok for their children than the United States version of TikTok has. It's literally a by design piece of technology that is just designed to lull people into. It's like another version of if Brave New World, if they had the opportunity, probably would have added technology into that as one of the addictions. But yeah, That's a fascinating insight into it because, like, I've wondered. I literally just had a conversation literally last week with a pastor who is a dear friend of mine, and was saying, I just didn't know. I just thought we were supposed to trust, the CDC. So I did exactly and it wasn't like some nefarious. And now looking back, it would never in a million years have ever have gone down that road. And um, while I don't know 100% how to even respond in that addiction because it's still processing it, what I can say is that there is a failure of imagination. We talked about that kind of in the beginning. Nobody saw it coming. We're recording this on 9/11. When you look at 9/11, what did everybody? Nobody thought that could happen. The failure was a failure of imagination, and that is the failure that's happening in front of us right now. Is this couldn't possibly happen in my county? It couldn't possibly happen in my city or my country. So this, from the inside out, is the way that that the enemy, whoever theologically, wherever you fall, I believe it's an enemy. That's an enemy. That's an enemy. But wherever you fall in that, that there's an enemy at work, and to destroy from the inside out has been a great strategy in other nations, and it's working pretty effectively here.
Darren, one thing I learned when I was researching this, and this is in the book too, is that you can't assume that most of the Christians around you will be on the right side when the secret police come around. And I quoted in the book Camilla Bendova. She and her late husband Václav were the only Christians in the inner circle of the senior level of dissidents in Czechoslovakia. And I asked her, was it hard for you and your husband as faithful Christians to work with Havel and the others? Because they were all hippies who were, had really loose morals and things like that. And she said, no, it wasn't hard, because when you're facing totalitarianism, the rarest quality to find in others is courage. She said, wow. Rod, you must not think that all of our Christians that we went to church with, that they did the right thing. Most of them kept their heads down and conformed to avoid trouble. My husband and I, we spoke out. They really did. They were part of an activist group. They didn't just sit quietly and take it. She said that we knew, my husband and I, that we needed to be able to count on others who would look after our kids if we got sent to prison, and they needed to be able to trust us. So that bond of fellowship and deep trust went across religious lines even to the non-religious. And it made me realize, too, that we Christians in America have to be prepared to make alliances across denominational lines within the broader Christian community, but also with people who may not share our faith, but they have the courage that we need to be able to rely on, and we need to model for ourselves.
Yeah, Rod, that's a very astute, very astute.
I really quickly wanted to brag on Pastor Darren in our church. Not since I was a kid going to my dad's church, who was a pastor of the church we went to growing up, have I ever heard so consistently a congregation pray for other churches in the way that Conduit does. It's one of my favorite things. Anytime I hear you or any of the other pastors praying for other churches from the stage, it warms my heart to no end. I grew up, thankfully, with a dad and in a house and in a church that loved that, and even did interfaith dialogues. My dad would invite a Catholic priest, a Jewish rabbi. And he would even say back then, we're all going to share a prison cell eventually. Joking, this is 30 years ago, and we all thought that was a complete joke. But no, it's a remarkable thing to think that way, and it's a way that many of us are starting to think, thankfully, even though it's under these unpleasant circumstances. But one thing I wanted to get in, Darren, for you to kind of tee you up to talk a little bit more about, you mentioned it already, but the travel, the missions work, the things that Conduit is doing, not to turn this into an infomercial for the church, but I think it ties in here of you have a perspective. I just moved from Los Angeles, where I feel like I went on a missions trip for 10 years to California. And,
you were.
And
yeah.
now, but you, having traveled and the work that you and the other pastors and so many at our church are doing, can you expound a little bit more on that, of what you see there as opposed to here, and sort of the sleeping giant that we're facing here of a totalitarian moment that others are living in already?
Yeah, I was in Africa, East Africa this summer, and I was, lots of long drives, which means lots of long conversations. And one of my guys I've been working with for 15 years now. It's like, and he doesn't know the difference between a Republican or a Democrat. He doesn't know. I mean, he actually thought President Obama was from Kenya too. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't know, but he did say this. He's like, Darren, I don't know what's going on in your country, but everything you do there, it affects us. It affects our world. And he was mentioning the the lockdown that happened over the span of Europe, and it was then enforced on Africa. And you know, by the time Uganda schools reopened, 30% of their children did not return. They've just disappeared in 2 years. Nobody knows where they are. But it was this totalitarian idea that's literally spread globally that, you know, they're looking at our country going, man, I sure hope you guys get it together because it's affecting us every day, these policies. And I would say when you talk about my lack of imagination, it's a failure of imagination. My friends in East Asia, especially, they're, you know, for better or for worse, CNN is the one thing that is in every airport, it seems like, in the world. I don't care where I've been. There's a CNN on in the airport lounge or whatever. So they think that's what the world, what the United States is. And they recognize, specifically those in East Asia and their countries, I probably shouldn't say out loud, but they're looking at the policies of the government shutting down communication, of forcing tech companies to censor. And they're thinking, man, the United States was the one place we could trust for freedom. And now you guys are going down the same road we are. You know, you guys got to get it together. You know, they're praying for us, and they're planning to send missionaries to the United States because they view us as a nation that is lost, not as one that is on solid footing. They view us as a nation in need. And they're not wrong.
Yeah, you know, yeah, you're right. I've become friends with Pastor Andrew Brunson. Many of our viewers might know him. He spent 18 months in a Turkish prison on trumped-up charges. And President Trump, as well as some Democratic leaders in the Senate, got him out. And he was telling me recently that coming back to America after having spent so many years abroad as a missionary is really, really distressing to him because he's a patriot. But he said that we are in so much trouble in America, and the American church just doesn't see it. So I want to ask you, Darren, you know, we're talking because we're trying to raise money through Angel Studios to turn Live Not by Lies into a documentary series where we'll go interview some of the people that are in the book, those who are still alive, and bring the same message to a broader platform. Do you think that a video version of the book can spread the message more and galvanize people more?
Oh, buddy. When I heard that you guys were thinking of doing this, I about got Pentecostal. Like, I was so excited because, again, I've given the book out to so many, but one of the things, back to the point about even technology and addiction, people process information differently than they used to. And so, you know, Amazon, Kindle, they've got stats about how many books are actually finished after they're started, and it's dismal. Anything over 100 pages is like, you probably would know, Rod, because you're actually a real author, but it's, you know, less than 20% that are reading the whole book. But on the other hand, the one thing that streaming services have done is created an opportunity where you could take the message of this book, make it real and impacting through video. I mean, it's why, I mean, look, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but we were one of the first ones to jump on board and say, yeah, well, we're going to commit to financially support this because you're going to, I mean, who knows, right? But you're going to multiply your impact and audience by factors of who knows what. But I was excited and ecstatic, and man, I want to see this get done. Whatever we can do to help you get it done, we want to see it done.
Well, thanks for your help. And I have to tell you that when I give talks about the book, the things that always capture people's hearts are the stories I tell, the stories that are in the book, especially the one in there about Alexander Ogorodnikov, the Russian Christian who was in prison for a while and who was visited by angels that helped restore his faith. Now, when I tell the story, it's infecting on its own, but when I'm thinking about, when I heard that from his lips, about the tears running down his cheeks as he told the story through his cheeks that are partially paralyzed from the beatings he took for our Lord in prison, That's the sort of thing we can get on camera, and that's the sort of thing that sells the story and lets people know this man is not just somebody being interviewed or just words on a page. This man is a witness.
Yes. And recording
Amazing.
that history is important for him, important for the people that suffered. And man, it's of critical importance for the world. And I think of people like my wife is such a great example. She loves Jesus, and she thinks if it's important enough, I'm going to tell her. So she's just waiting for me to hear it. But we watch documentaries together, weirdly enough. Like, I know this idea of shooting this in a docu-series, bite-sized pieces, is going to multiply the message and awaken way more people than are already wide awake in our country.
Well, this is so great. Thank you for joining us, Darren. You've been a great supporter already of the project, as you mentioned, and we look forward to, Lord willing, launching this soon with the support of Angel and others. But thank you for all that you do. Thanks for letting us be in that audience each Sunday at 11 a.m. And really, just as a closing word, I love big ideas. I love talking about these things in almost an existential sense, and I find a lot of comfort in that. But it is the practicality, the nuts and bolts of running a church, of doing missions work, freeing people from slavery, talking about this stuff, helping parents think through school board issues, all the things that have been going on here in Franklin. So we just love and appreciate you and Shannon and the church, and thanks for joining us today.
Man, God bless you guys. Godspeed. I have every confidence that this is going to get funded. This message, one of the things we used to say in the music business is the right song, it'll find its way no matter what. If it's a great song, it's going to find its way. It'll burrow out from whatever. And I think this message is one that, by the sheer force of your will, if nothing else, you're going to make it happen. But I think this message is so important that that it's going to burrow from whatever into the public, because the message is that important.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank
God
you,
bless.
brother.
Thanks, guys. God bless.
Well,
Here we are.
what a fun conversation, man. I was just sitting re-listening to as we mentioned, that was recorded a little bit earlier today. All of this is such serious subject matter. I get it, and it is, and it matters, and we should think very, be as wise as serpents, loving as doves. But it's also like, what a blast, man. We're getting to talk with people like that, and we'll have some other upcoming guests, some very exciting names that we'll share in the days to come. But even just this part of the process has been a blast, of getting to chat with people and do these with you and Rod, and interact with fans. And I still can't believe this is my job in life. And I know you feel the same way, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I definitely feel the same way, and I'm immensely grateful again for all the support, everyone watching right now, and obviously lots of people are finding it after the fact as well, these live streams, which is great. And Pastor, I almost called him Dr. Darren. I wonder how do you feel about that? Pastor Darren, great guy. Yeah, Dr. Darren's great, and it was cool for me just to have that specific conversation about what it's like from kind of the pastor's perspective. So it's great.
Yeah, because we'll get to. I think we have a question teed up here that we'll get to in one sec, but it's, as I said there at the end, it's big ideas. It's fun to dissect. I know, as a peek behind the curtain, Isaiah, other members of our team, myself, we have text threads going, email chains going. We're constantly sending each other ideas, articles, links, people we should interview, and your head's in this creative space, this intellectual space where it needs to be right now, as we work for hopefully launching here soon. But then it's nice to just remember, like, okay, everyone has families and jobs, and you're running a church, you're running a business, you're going to work. Like, this stuff has to make sense, I guess, is my point, on a practical day-to-day basis. And it does, because we're seeing it all over the place. So we're going to do a slightly shorter episode tonight, but I think we have a question teed up, so we'll get to that. We'll give a few plugs, and we'll get you on your way. All right, for the filmmakers, what aspect of the project are you most excited for? Isaiah, why don't you go first? I've got some thoughts, but what is it about what we're doing that keeps you up at night in a good way. We talked, I think, in a previous episode about some of the challenges and asking people, as we still ask, be praying for us. This is serious subject matter, and there will be travel and other things involved. But what's exciting to you about what we may get to do?
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of things. A project like this has a lot of phases, you know, ranging from this part of it, which is very early. But you know, I'm already diving in. I've carved out, well, all of my time already, you know, so guys show up because I don't have a job. This is my job.
Yeah,
So
this is our job.
and
Yeah.
RJ's in the same boat. I mean, I am full time on this project right now, because I just know that it's gonna find a home, and I know that we're gonna find enough supporters to make it a reality. That said, we need people to follow through. But no, I'm working on it full time right now. I just came up and hung out with you guys, RJ, you and the other producer, last week. You know, we spent a whole day just going through Rod's book, talking about new ideas, because I think one thing that's really exciting about this is, you know, there's no way to just take a book and make it into a series. You know, like it's a different medium, and there's a lot of fun, inventive opportunity here to come up with new strategies to make this story very visual, to bring in other elements of it that maybe wouldn't work so well in a book. I'm really excited about that. I'm selfishly, I'm super excited about getting to travel a little bit and meet these people. You know, I think obviously most people will be meeting these heroes through the series, and I'm excited, and I think that'll be great. But you know, I'm very excited that I get to go spend a little time with them myself, and really just spend a lot of time in this world trying to make something beautiful, you know, and make something beautiful that's gonna hopefully have a real impact on people feeling like they have some agency in all of this, because we always do. I think that's, if you read enough of these stories, you realize that no matter how crazy things are, and man, they've certainly gotten a lot crazier than they are here right now. Let's just be grateful. You always have an opportunity to make the most of that. And I'm just so inspired by those stories. And I'd say, to wrap that up, I think this is something that I'm really excited to bring into the series, is just gratitude. You know, I think there's a real need for all of us to be grateful for what we have right now, because if we become ungrateful for that, we're more likely to lose it. You know, we're likely to let it just kind of go away. And so I think that's something that I really want to highlight a lot is, yes, we are facing challenges right now. Yes, things are a little bit wonky, but we aren't so far down the path that we can't make this country into a place that that is more truthful than it currently is. We still have an opportunity to do that, and we should be grateful for the fact that we can, for instance, we can be having this conversation right now over the internet. If we were in China, this conversation would not be happening, and it wouldn't even have gotten to the point where it could have been happening. And so we have a lot to be grateful for right now, and I think that's something that I really want to find the right line of saying, yes, things are challenging, but man, we really got to be grateful for what we have so we don't lose it.
Love all of that, man. No, thank you for sharing. And I would just say, I mean, so much of what you said, I feel the same, of course. But there is also, this is all, I don't know. This is all fun. So that gratitude you're talking about, just it's an adventure. I guess maybe even is a better word to say than fun, because there are parts of it, you know, being away from your family, travel, sleepless nights, worrying about how much this costs versus that, and you know, hiring in people, and I mean, there's just so many logistics that goes into doing something like this. Real gratitude of that Rod has partnered with us and trusted this story that he captured, and yeah, just the people. It's all about the relationships. Everything I do, the friendships we take away, the experiences, the meals. The meat church barbecue meals. Although I don't think there's going to be much Texas barbecue in Eastern Europe. Maybe we can bring some over there and teach them about it. But no, it's just that time together. That's what I'm looking forward to, is being out there with my friends, telling this important story. And like you said, I really resonate with wanting to make something excellent, makes beautiful, contribute something to the cultural conversation. And I think, where all this starts, as you said, our hope and prayer is a renaissance, a reformation, a revival in this country and others of seeking the truth, the ultimate truth in God, but also the truth about daily facts. The other day, I think, Isaiah, we were talking about, grain production in the USSR. Stalin would lie about even how much grain they couldn't tell the truth about anything because they had to keep the lie going to keep power and control. And we all, on our own personal levels, we can resonate with that when we feel like things are slipping away, a relationship, something, work, whatever. Our instinct as sinful humans is to lie to ourselves, lie to someone else. I mean, you can see how easy, but enough people do that in a culture, and the end result is something pretty horrific, as we've witnessed, and hope to catalog and share with you, and then also point people towards the light, towards hope, which we always need and we do have. So that's a great question. I think we are ready to close out this episode. We want you, again, please go angel.com/live. If you haven't already expressed interest, please social media. To give a quick plug to Pastor Darren Tyler, Conduit Church is the church that he is the pastor of in Franklin. They do a weekly midweek podcast that I highly recommend if you're looking for something fun to listen to. You can find all that at conduitchurch.com and read more about what they're up to. But we want you to go express your interest, tell your friends. And again, we can't say exactly when. We're getting close. We're very close. We want to go live. And at that point, everything becomes real. So be checking your email, following on social media. Zay, any plugs you want to give where people can find you?
Yeah, no, I'm Zay Smallman on Twitter, but mainly just keep an eye on this project, and we're looking forward to engaging more with you really soon.
Yeah, so thank you guys for tuning in. Please email us, reach out, tweet, ask us questions throughout the coming days. But some big announcements coming, guests, other things. So stay tuned. But again, thanks for joining us tonight. God bless, and we'll talk soon.